Welcome to ELT in Chile, a podcast about teaching English in Chile and now teaching online. I'm Daniel Gwynn.
And I'm José Luis Poblete, and on this podcast, we share our knowledge and experience related to teaching. In today's episode, we're interviewing Jorge Comte, an English teacher from Chile that had been teaching in China until the pandemic happened. So Jorge is an English teacher who also has a master's in teaching through drama. He's been teaching for 12 years. He's taught at different contexts like schools, universities, institutes, and now training centers.
We should add that this is a video episode. So if you're listening to it and would like to see the video, you can watch on the website, www.eltinchile.com, as well as on our YouTube channel. Welcome, Jorge.
Hey, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, we have many questions for you, like to get to know you better, and of course to learn from your experiences. That's the idea of this podcast. So yeah, we're going to have different questions. Let's say Daniel will ask some, and I'm going to ask some. So Daniel, I think you have a question for him.
Yes. So starting out, first of all, where did you grow up, and how did you go about learning English?
So I grew up in Santiago. But during my childhood, I had to move to different areas for different reasons. So I went, through, I would say, like middle class settings to very, very poor settings. So English was not something that was very, that was easy to access. And it wasn't really part of my immediate surroundings either, right? So I went through, I lived some time in La Florida and in San Bernardo, La Pintana, and then Puente Alto. Right? And then eventually I started getting into English through music, like I guess many people my age do.
Our age, let's say.
Yeah, well, some of you look a little older.
Oh my gosh.
I don't want to answer that question. So it was, let's say, through music, basically, and then you started learning English.
Yeah, so I did the typical thing, of trying to record something from the radio, wishing that the speaker just won't speak on top of the track, and then I would just try to see what I was hearing, and then writing it down, and much of the time I didn't really get it right. It just sound like I wrote something that sounded similar to what I heard, but that actually sparked like me liking English.
And I think that that's one thing that we had to do before we had technology. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have things. I think it's called Shazam, that you can play a song and it'll play the lyrics for you and tell you the name. So look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have this notebook full of lyrics, right? And I found it a few years ago, because this was from the late 90s, and I found it a few years ago, and I was so embarrassed by everything I wrote there, because I got all the lyrics wrong.
Yeah,
and I would just sing them so confidently.
Yeah, and also,
but you know what? I mean, like you were learning, and you were working on it. What did you want to say, Jose Luis?
Yeah, I mean, like when you bought, let's say, a CD, that sometimes it came with a sort of booklet that you could, let's say, read.
Right.
But that was not something that you can find, let's say, in every, CD. But I think that was like the beginning. And Jorge, did you enjoy your, let's say, learning English at school? Was that a good experience you had when you went to school, let's say primary or high school?
Well, in primary school, I didn't really have English classes, except when I was in the third grade. We had an English teacher for like 1 hour a week. But I remember I liked it immediately. Although I still remember that he taught us the word apple instead of apple. And I think I said apple until university.
Oh my gosh.
I think one of my teachers corrected me, one of my first oral tests in university. Yeah. And then I didn't have English until I don't even think I had English that whole year. I think the teacher was fired. And then I didn't have English again until the 7th grade, and my teacher was really good. And that's where I decided, in the 7th grade, I decided that I wanted to become an English teacher.
Very young.
Excellent.
Yeah, just it was I I still remember it was my very first class with him. And I thought that he was, he was this older teacher, but he was so approachable and he was really good. I thought his English sounded nice. I didn't really have anything to compare really, but I thought he had really good English. The classes were fun, but I was the only student who paid any attention in that class. Everybody else was playing, right? But then that was good for me anyway because I would charge my classmates to do their homework.
Very good.
So you were like an entrepreneur in middle school, high school.
Yeah, like even dangerous things like during the test, they would hand me over their tests and I would just charge them to, because I would complete mine really quickly and then they would stay there like not knowing what to do.
In a way,
oh my gosh,
let's say teaching when you were very young.
Yeah, I really loved it, and of course now, I think that helped me develop this sense of being very aware of what happens in the classroom. So, because I know what students are capable of.
Yeah, and let's say, and after that, Jorge, what training did you receive in regard to the language teaching? When, let's say, you just told us that you decided to become a teacher when you were very young, but then you had to go, of course, to university.
Right. So, well, when I was 15, I remember one of my mom's friends visited from Australia. She was Chilean, but she and her husband moved to Australia, during Pinochet's government, and so she came to visit. And I remember I told her that I liked English and that I was learning English at school and like trying to learn it through songs. And she said, "Okay, if you can save up enough money to buy the ticket, you can go to Australia and you can stay over with us for the summer." And so I did it. I took a couple of extra, like I took a couple of jobs, like what a teenager could do. My mom and my dad would also save up, and then eventually I got enough money for the tickets, and I spent the summer in Australia there. And my uncle, her husband, was an English teacher in Chile. He studied at your university, actually, as such, and he was working at an English institute there. So he would just let me tag along. I didn't have to pay for the course, so I learned some English there. Met some people, and we're still talking. And then so then when I came back, I was really, really good at English at school. So, and that made me like really want to become a teacher. So, but I was really bad at math, and so I knew that I was not going to do well in the PSU. So I decided to look for a program that didn't have any math in it. And that's where I got to the program from UNAB, right? And I noticed that it was the first time that they were ever gonna start the program. And I noticed that they didn't have any math in their curriculum at all. Like, and except... Did that
spark joy?
Yeah. And they only had... I forgot the name of the... When you do research, I forgot. Statistics.
You mean like... Okay.
Yeah. So they only had one statistics subject in the last year. So I thought, okay, I can learn some math from there. I mean, before then. Well, and in the end, I just started studying there, and I really loved it. I thought the teachers were really good. I loved to learn phonetics because I think that really helped me improve my pronunciation. I think my phonetics classes were really good. And then eventually I had the opportunity to take the semester abroad scholarship from the Ministry of Education. And I studied a semester in Canada during my last year, which helped me skip the statistics subject.
Oh, look at that. Well, that worked out nicely.
It did. It was perfect.
And this is so interesting for me to listen to because I feel like Jose Luis, his story with learning English also kind of came about through other, from his English teacher having brought him to the Tefl conference or some type of professional conference and kind of exposing him to English when he was a teenager in that way. And Jorge, it sounds like, that's quite similar to your story with having gone to Australia.
Right. I think that whatever meaningful approach you have to English when you're a teenager really helps you shape what you want to do in the future. Actually, with Jose Luis, we worked together at the North American Institute for about 2 years, I think. And we would teach teenagers. And actually, I think many of them became English teachers or are studying to become English teachers or have moved to foreign countries where they need to use English. So you're absolutely right.
That's wonderful. It sounds like you've sparked joy in a lot of people.
Of course. And
I hope so.
Yeah. And we inspire them, I think. Yeah. And also, I think the influence of teachers, it's really important, when we go to either high school or maybe if you take English at university. So I think in a way, that really helps people, Yeah. So, and like I mentioned before, well, Jorge had been teaching English in China, before until the pandemic happened. So, Jorge, what did you do before moving to China to teach English? What were you doing here in Chile? Or where were you teaching?
Yes, I was teaching. I had a full-time contract at Andres Bello University. And I was teaching in the English teacher training program, actually, and mainly in charge of the grammar courses for first and second year. But I also taught poetry, film, language in general. Also, I also taught some hours in the phonetics course. And I worked there for almost 10 years. So since I graduated from that university, and they offered me a job there, but I couldn't take it immediately because I'm a very anxious person. So I thought that when I graduated, I was not gonna get a job. I was sure that I was gonna be unemployed for at least a year. So I rushed into the first job I had, which was a great experience. Actually, it was at a school. So I signed my contract with them first, and then the university offered to hire me. So I couldn't really get out of that contract. But I told the director, of the program that I would, go back to them in a year when my contract with the school finished. And so I did. And I worked there for many years, and eventually I was able to participate in many projects. I was able to be included in the project with which we modified the curriculum of the program. And eventually I became the coordinator of the English courses for the program. Yeah. So I was doing that, and on the side, I was also doing hours in other universities. I did some courses, some general English courses for UMayor. I did business English for Universidad de Valparaíso. And also I did some English for the Universidad Británica. Rest in peace. And I was very busy, and on top of that, I was volunteering at Preuniversitario Trans. Right? So I was because for me it's very important that teaching be social, and sometimes I think universities lack that, private universities, and they. So I really wanted to contribute. So I was teaching Spanish for for students who belong in the LGBTQ plus community, which was really, really enriching. But I was doing so much. I was working like 50 hours a week. I was feeling really, really burnt out. I think it's difficult to work in Santiago also. So I reached a point in which I was achieving everything I wanted. And then I wondered, is this what I want? Like I wasn't even sure that that's what I wanted to do. And even though I always wanted it, I don't know if it makes any sense.
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I don't know, like it came with a whole existential crisis of like, why should I do what society wants me to do? Or why do I need to buy a house? I bought a house. And then I was like, why do I don't want to buy a house. Why did I buy a house? And yeah, so in the end I said, okay, I just want to have a break. I need a break from life. But I also love working. So I didn't want to just go on a sabbatical. So I said, okay, this is the perfect time to have an experience teaching abroad. And I was looking for different places, and I decided to go to Asia because I wanted to go as far as possible from Chile. Nothing against Chile, but I just wanted to be very far. And then I just, I was looking for a job in Japan. And then my sister said that her boyfriend had a friend who's an English teacher, and he moved to China to teach English. So she got me in touch with him, and it turns out that he had been my student.
Oh my gosh. Look at that.
For a small world.
He had been my student at Universidad Británica. Actually, I was in the committee that assessed his thesis, and I failed them.
Oh my gosh! So how did that play out then?
So well, the thing is that when it happened, they had this supervisor who abandoned them, midway. He left. He actually didn't tell anybody he was leaving. He just left because he got a job in Canada, or he got a scholarship in Canada or something like that. But yeah, so he just left and basically abandoned the kids, right? So, and then I was supposed to oversee their progress. So I had a meeting with them, and I told them all the flaws that I saw in the study, and so they said that they were gonna fix it. And then eventually they didn't. So by the time they gave me the final thesis, they failed. So but then I got together with them, and we said, okay, there's no way we can fix this into a decent study, but we're just gonna mask with writing so that you pass, right? And so, because it wasn't just me who had to assess it, there were two other professors. And so I helped them fix the thesis, and in the end they passed. They barely passed. But then when they had their presentation, their dissertation, they also failed it. And so, and it was so heartbreaking because when I had to give them the result because I presided the committee, and I had to give them the results. My voice was breaking when I gave them the news because I had never had to fail someone in their dissertation. And they cried. It was really bad. So then I called them in the teacher's lounge, and I told them, okay, we have 1 week for you to present again, right? So I'm gonna help you fix it. And so we got together, for that week. We got together at the end of the working day, and I would help them make the presentation and practice, and eventually they passed, and they passed actually with a really good grade. And so they were very thankful. So then when I sent him this Facebook message, because he's a friend of my sister's boyfriend, and I wrote to him very very formally. I was like, dear Mr. Alcaino, my name is, and then he just answers back like, you were my teacher. But I didn't recognize the name, and it was because on Facebook he had he was using his middle name and his second last name, so his mother's last name, just so students wouldn't add him on Facebook. So when he told me it was him, I was like, oh man, he must hate me. And then turns out he actually didn't help me. He was very thankful that I helped them prepare. So he said, you know what, I'll talk to my boss, and they love me here because I've been doing a good job. And if I tell them you were my teacher, of course they're gonna want you. But I thought it was one of those things that people say. I didn't think he was actually going to do it. And then a week later, I get an email from the company saying like, hey, you were referred to us by one of our favorite teachers, and we want an interview with you. And then it just unfolded very quickly. That was in September, and I was traveling in December.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I don't know. Any questions?
So, I mean, it's amazing how that worked out and how small of a world it is.
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm wondering is how long, when did you go to China? And then how long had you been there before the pandemic started?
I left for China when, let's see, it was December 2017. And I came back March 2020. Yes.
Okay.
So I had been there for a little over 2 years.
Okay. And what was your teaching context there? Were you teaching kids, adults, at a university, at a school?
Yeah, it was very different from what I was doing here, because here I was mainly teaching adults at a university level, and I was actually teaching mainly future English teachers. So there, in China, the job is in a training center. Well, they call them training centers. It's like a language center. It's Sesame Street English in Tianjin, and I was teaching kids who were 3 to 6 years old.
Oh my gosh!
Which is an age range I had never taught, so I was really scared. I was really nervous about it because everybody was very confident. They were saying like, "Well, you've been teaching for over 10 years." And you have so much experience, you prepare other teachers, but then I said, nothing I've done is similar to this in any way. And I remember the first week I only had to observe classes, and I don't think, well, some of the teachers were really, really, really good, I thought. Some others wouldn't do what I would think of as a great class, but still, everybody made an impact in me because everybody was so active. The whole class, they were singing and dancing and jumping and running and playing. And I was like, I don't think I can do that. And I remember finishing, my first observation, and the person who had been my student before was now my superior, because he was kind of like the supervisor in our center. Which I think is really cool. I love it when I've encountered former students of mine who are now in a position where I have to report to them. I feel like so grown up. Like I feel they've grown so much. And then I remember telling him, like, do I have to sing? Do I have to dance? I don't dance. Like, do I have to dance? and he told me like, don't worry, you'll pick it up really quick and you're gonna love it. In the first month, I don't think I loved it. I was like, I made the worst decision. I abandoned my life. I abandoned my job. I had a really good job. And to come and dance for kids, but then eventually it grows on you, and the kids are so adorable. I had never taught kids before, that young. And in the end, I loved it. And I didn't even notice when I was actually singing and dancing with the kids and jumping and lifting the kids or playing silly games, or making funny faces, being like, okay, what's this? And they would go, angry, the teacher is angry. I was like, oh. And it was really fun. And to me, what was also interesting is that, well, I've always used sense of humor in my class. But when you work with adults, you can get away with a little bit of a darker sense of humor. I've always been a little sarcastic. But with kids, you can't really do that, right? Because they haven't developed that yet. So I use sense of humor in a different way. It's more physical, right? Like I always pretend to hit a wall, or to drop something, or to fall, or sometimes, and they crack up. It's insane. I feel like a stand-up comedian when I'm in front of them. Yeah, because they would laugh at the silliest things. Like sometimes I would hide objects behind my back. Like say we're studying fruits, right? And then I would be like, what's this? And it's an apple. So they'd say, that's an apple. And then, okay, what's this? It's an orange. Okay. And then I would go, what's this? But I have nothing in my hand. And they crack up. They're like, whoa, you have nothing. And they go insane. But it's very different from what I was doing before.
That's awesome. I mean, that kind of gives me memories from back when I taught kindergarten, and all, like the jumping around, the acting, the dancing, the singing. And I think that's part of, that's part of teaching young learners.
Absolutely. I didn't think it was like that because I never really had the experience. I remember I studied it at university, but I never really got to see it. Right. And then I still thought that our students should be doing more than what they were doing. Right? I've always had that idea. So many of the classes that I observed at the beginning were the kids just repeating words randomly, and that didn't necessarily make any sense together. And I understand that drilling is important at that age, but I don't think it's the only thing, right? I think that kids need to be making connections. They need to see relations, and they need to try to communicate, more realistically and more meaningfully. So I started, working with the teachers in my center. I basically kind of guided them since I was the only one with experience in curriculum building, and so we started working with values. So we were basically teaching values through English. So when we were teaching, for example, the sentence "I brush my teeth," but the value is responsibility with your own health. So we would make and I also started asking the teachers to incorporate more meaningful tasks. Like if you're teaching someone to wash their hands, then take them, and have them wash their hands. Or if you're teaching them to take care of animals, then, create situations in which they actually have to pet an animal, or they have to feed an animal or give water to the animal, right? If you don't have access to animals, then, you can pretend you're an animal and see how they treat you, right? If someone does something that's not right, show them how you should treat an animal. Right? So we started doing that, and eventually the kids actually started speaking more. I also noticed at the beginning that the students had to repeat sentences, and that's how they just learned them. But sometimes I always questioned, maybe the student doesn't feel what you're asking them to feel, right? For example, sometimes they when we're learning family members, they had to learn a sentence that was like, "My brother is cute." And I remember telling like, "My baby brother is cute." And I remember telling my colleagues, like, what if they have no brother? Why should they memorize that sentence, right? Or what if they don't want to describe their brother as cute? Maybe they want to say that the brother is fun, or that the brother is tall, or like
the brother is annoying,
right? And so in the end, I started questioning that, and the company saw it my way, and it was very hard to change their mind because Chinese companies are very stubborn, and also they have this idea that that's how you learn English, and
like through like drilling and, let's say, repeating.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, I remember when I first started, they asked me to prepare a summer camp program. And I remember when we used to have summer camp at Norteamericano, which was so much fun. And you had so many different activities and, some artistic activities. So I came up with a project that was very similar to that. No copyright infringement intended. But then they would tell me like, okay, but how many words are they going to learn in how many sentences? Like we need the exact number so we can tell the parents. Oh. It's like, well, the kid will learn what they learn. It's like, it's more important that they experience this and that they get to speak, whatever the language they learn allows them to speak. So it was very hard for me to make them see eye to eye with me. And then eventually they did. And that's when I got promoted. And so I got promoted to teacher trainer. And then eventually I worked together with the foreign teacher manager, who's a really, really good teacher from Britain. And so now we work together and we do teacher training and we prepare these special programs together. And we're modifying the curriculum, to make it all like more value-based and more meaningful for the kids.
So,
That's wonderful. It sounds like you've done amazing work.
Yeah. So
I did. So I was actually gonna be there just for a year, because actually when I wanted to resign from UNAB, my boss, she convinced me to just take a leave of absence for a year and then come back and have my job back, right? Because if I quit, they wouldn't be able to offer me a full-time contract anymore if I came back. Right. Mm-hmm. So she said, okay, go have your experience and then come back and your job is here. Which was great because I'm very anxious, as I said before. So I'm always worried that I'm going to be unemployed or I'm going to get fired. And then I stayed there for a year and they offered me this raise and the promotion. So I decided to stay there. And so which meant I had to quit here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jorge, you mentioned one of, let's say, a really important cultural difference when it comes to education, like parents or maybe the language center asking you, let's say, the number of words that students were supposed to learn. So Jorge, what are the major cultural differences you notice when you moved to China? Not say in terms of culture and also in terms of education.
So, well, first you have like this immediate culture shock, right? That things are written in a different language that you don't understand. No one really speaks English on the street, or so it's very hard to communicate. Food is very different. So that's like the obvious thing that would happen. I knew that, right? But I didn't think that working in a Chinese company would be so different from working at a Chilean company, right? Starting from the way that workers behave. In our company, we have foreign teachers and we also have Chinese teachers. And the Chinese teachers also teach English, but they're Chinese. And what I noticed, and the first time I noticed the difference was that the Chinese teachers always seem very busy, but they're not necessarily doing so much. But they have to give the impression that they're busy, because otherwise they're deemed lazy. So for them, a lot of us are very lazy, right? Or seem very lazy, even though we do our job, right? And we do everything we're supposed to do. Whereas, foreign teachers tend to have the impression that, okay, if I finished what I have to do, then the rest of my time is free. And then another thing that was shocking a little was that when there was a meeting, it was never during working hours. It was always before or after, right? If that happens Chile, right? In Chile, sometimes it might happen, but it's not so often, I guess, or at least from my experience. And sometimes if it is going to be a very long meeting, it either turns into a lunch or a dinner. So at least you get that benefit, or they pay you for a working hour, right? Yeah. So we noticed in China that all of the meetings were outside your working schedule, and so we asked, is this paid extra? And they said, of course not. And then we were like, well, then why don't we have the meeting during working hours? Because we're not coming on our day off, or we're not staying later than that. And they thought we were so rude. But the Chinese teachers would not complain about it. They would just accept it, right? And then complain, and they would complain about it when the boss left, right? So picture this. It's the director of the center. He enters the teacher's lounge and says something in Chinese that we don't understand, right? And then everybody says, 对, which means yes. And then he leaves. And we ask the local teachers, what did he say? And they're like, oh, we have to stay after class because there's going to be a center meeting. And so then the foreign teachers would say, why do we have to stay? And are they going to pay that? And they're like, no. And then we asked them, do you agree with that? And they were like, no, we don't, but we have to do it. I was like, what if you have plans? What if you have a family?
That's the thing. What if you have a kid at home, that you have to pick up from school? Or, what if you have a doctor's appointment or something like that?
Plan, not plan outside work.
Or a plan, or you just don't want to. Because I guess when you have a job, you put in the hours that you need to put in, and then the rest is your own time, right? But in China, there's this idea that the boss is always right. So whatever they say goes, right? And sometimes it's always interesting to see how, the higher ups always come up with these ideas that, because you're an experienced teacher, won't work. And then, or that need a lot of improvement if you want them to work. So, and then they come with these ideas. Like, for example, one time they said, like, okay, we're going to have a prince and princess ball for like our kids. And we're like, okay, that's fun. And then we're like, yeah, but the idea is to bring more kids to the center. So like each person can bring a guest and they all have to wear tuxedos and party dresses. We're like, what's okay? And then the idea was that they had to memorize a sentence and then they had to do the waltz and then they had to have tea. I was like, okay, and where do they learn English? and then they were like,
and where do they learn? And where do they learn to waltz?
Right. It was
where are they
insane.
getting the tuxedos?
It was crazy. And then one of our teachers had to dress as Snow White because they wanted to have like a Disney character. I was like, but we're Sesame Street English. Shouldn't we use Sesame Street characters? And I was supposed to be the presenter. So I had to wear like very formal clothes. They got me like a groom's attire. But it was insane. It was all a mess. No one knew what they had to do. They gave us this script that we had to memorize. I was like, why can't I just speak and go, see how it goes and, feed from the audience, and we're like, no, you have to say exactly this. I was like, okay, how is that idea good? So then in our center, eventually they let, whenever an activity involved the foreign teachers, they let us prepare it and plan it. And it was always successful. But in other centers, they didn't really have that luck. And the foreign teachers also didn't feel like they wanted to change that. And that's another thing that caught my attention. When I worked in Chile, I think most teachers love their job, at least the ones I've encountered, or they take it very seriously, right? So even if they don't like teaching, I don't know, they show up on time, they do what they have to do, they give test results, whatever. But foreign teachers in China are considered lazy because many of them, they're not trained as teachers, before they move there. They don't have an interest in teaching, and they just like the idea of having a good salary in a country that's very inexpensive, which probably they couldn't access in their own country, right? So we had a lot of teachers who just would miss work for no reason or showed up drunk. And you get, what we call, the teachers that I work with, we call it like the Expat Syndrome. You get the teachers who are just there kind of like a work and holiday. So they don't really take their job seriously. They just want to party. They show up to work drunk. We've had a few teachers deported for drug possession, which I guess it's okay, whatever you want to do in your personal life, but as long as it doesn't affect your work, right? And especially since, in China, drugs are they're forbidden just like here, but it's highly enforced, right? So if a foreigner even tries to buy drugs, they would get deported immediately, right? First, they arrest you for about a week and then you get deported. And I've seen it happen to 3 teachers. So I know, like, it's not a myth, right? I've seen it happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sorry. This just makes me think of things. And I mean, I'm a foreigner living here in Chile, and the way I go about things is I think, well, I'm a guest in this country. So I need to follow the rules. I need to be respectful and everything. And I think that, as you said, we do find that maybe it's less so in Chile, but people that come, and they do want to party, things like that, and they're just using a teaching job or something like that to pay for that, and they unfortunately don't take it very seriously.
Yeah, that I've seen it happen a lot there. I'm sure it happens here, but at least the teachers that I've shared with, but I've never actually had to work with many foreigners in Chile. Yeah, but I guess it happens everywhere, right? I remember I never was one to party too much here in Chile, but my first year in China, I went crazy. But I never let it, interfere with my job because I took it very seriously, right? And that's different for some people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know if you were talking about, let's say, money there, like let's say that people think that China is a very expensive country. So I don't know, should we go ahead with this topic, Daniel? Or do you think we should?
Sure.
Yeah. And this is something that really interests me because I think when you move to a country, you don't really know what to expect in terms of cost, in terms of, how much money you're going to receive and how far that money's going to go. So, did you make enough money to live comfortably there? Do you feel like your job was stable? Did you have good working conditions?
I think that the conditions I have are very good. The company where I work, I don't think it's standard, right? But it does happen a lot when it comes to English teaching. They always want foreigners to come. In China, they have this idea that when you're a foreigner, especially a native speaker, that it's the best way to learn a language, right? Which I think I would agree with, depending on the person. It's not like all foreigners will be better, right? Yeah. Or all native speakers will be better. So the company where I work, my contract is for 31 hours per week. And it's my only job, so it's very different from working the 50 hours I was working here, right? My schedule is also better. I work from 2 p.m. until 8 p.m. and then on Sundays I work from 8 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon. Wow. So it's very easygoing, I would say. From the 31 hours that I'm hired for, I used to have about 10 to 15 teaching hours a week. So you have a lot of time to prepare for those classes. Some foreign teachers use it wisely, right? They prepare really, really good classes and they have meetings and they talk to each other, right? But others, they do the bare minimum and they basically just do nothing all day. So I understand why the Chinese, our Chinese co-workers would think foreigners are lazy. Yeah, there's this general conception, yeah. And then the salary is actually pretty good, because I was making the same amount of money I was making here, but it costs like half, to be in that city. Wow. So life expenses are really. So I got to travel a lot. Like sometimes I would have a weekend off and go to Japan, or I would have, I don't know, like 4 days in a row, and then I would just let's go to Korea because it's 2 hours away.
And now that I'm sorry to interrupt, but now that I think about it, isn't today Chinese New Year?
Yes, it is.
Look at that. Happy Chinese New Year.
Yeah. In Chinese, 新年快乐 is one of the few things I know how to say.
There you go.
I also know how to say no spicy, please.
I guess it must be very spicy.
It is, but I love it. Like at the beginning, I never ate spicy food in Chile. I hated it actually. Just the bare minimum amount of spice, I would it's like, this is inedible. And then so when I got there, the first thing I learned how to say was bula, which is not spicy, please. And then they would always try to convince you to eat it a little spicy. So the conversation would go like, I would say bula bula or bulada, and they would say like wela. Bula bula, and they were like nah, wela. And then when you ate it, it was spicy. I was like, oh my god,
oh no,
why can't they respect that I don't want spicy? But then eventually, since everything was spicy, whether you wanted it or not, I grew to like it, and now I got used to it, and I actually miss it when I don't eat spicy. So there's an Asian supermarket downtown. So I often go there and buy the spicy things I used to eat in China.
Yeah, very good.
And then one more thing I loved about the job is that it gave me a lot of time for myself. So it happened here that, in Chile, that I was always busy. And on the weekend, I was so tired that I would just, be at home and sleep, or like not even get up or shower. But so I didn't really, I guess that's the reason why I was, burnt out, that I felt that you just live for work, and that your life is about work. And then I was in China, working, right, and working full time, but it still left me enough time to, make friends, go out, travel, find, be in a relationship, do fun things with your partner. And that was so new to me. So I think that my first year in China was probably my happiest year as an adult. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Sure, because please, Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, and so what you were saying with the working hours, so you had 31 working hours, but you would spend about 15 of those in the classroom teaching?
Yes. And then the rest you would prepare for those classes, yeah.
Look at that. I mean, I think that's awesome that you have that. And I don't know that you would really find that anywhere in Chile where they give you that much preparation time that is paid.
Right. I think that the pandemic is actually kind of ruining that a little bit over there. It's many foreign teachers had to go back to their countries, and they're not able to go back yet, like myself. And so the company kind of started hiring a lot of foreigners, not really caring whether they're capable of teaching or they've been trained for that. I'm not there to train them either. So basically, I would say that the quality of teachers that they're hiring has kind of declined, because they're just not prepared, right? And they're just hiring anybody who looks foreigner. So they hired someone that then I had to teach English to. I was like, why would you hire someone who doesn't speak English to teach English? Or they hire someone just because they're a foreigner. And I don't know, we had this girl from Zimbabwe. And usually whenever I met people from Zimbabwe, they actually have very beautiful English. Of course they have their accent, but we all do, right? I also have my accent. But they still want for there to be a standard, right? So that it's at least comprehensible, right? But then this teacher was teaching the sentence, I go to school by car. And I'm not exaggerating, but the recording I got sent, because the company was very worried about her pronunciation. They sent me this recording where the teacher was saying like, I go to school by car. I was like, what is that? Yeah. So I had to have like pronunciation sessions with her, and eventually she got fired because she just wouldn't improve. And then and that is happening a lot. They're hiring a lot of people who are just not ready.
So it sounds kind of like an issue with native speakerism, where they're hiring people just based on them being native speakers. It also sounds quite short-sighted on their part of just wanting to hire people, to just have a warm body in the room, so to say.
The first year I was in China, I think I saw everything working perfectly. And then the second year you start seeing like the holes in the plot. And then the pandemic just made everything very unstable in especially for the private education industry. And then it became apparent that they just want to have bodies, like you said, right? And then that also affected the amount of hours that the teachers can prepare their classes for. So because now they started saying like, okay, we need to bring money in the company because we wasted money for almost a year, right? And we didn't make new money. So let's offer courses. So now we used to have classes only from 6 to 8 in the evening slot, because we're an after school program. And then right. And then now we're having like private lessons and individual classes and extra classes, at 1 p.m. or 3 p.m. And sometimes like our working hours do not start until 2, but they made us go at 1. And then they say, you can have a payback hour later. But then eventually you're so busy, you can't really take a payback hour, because they say like, you can only take a payback hour on an hour that you're not teaching. And it's like, but I'm teaching every hour. And then you're like, okay, so then you can take it. And then why do you give me that? And instead of paying me for the hour, it's like, oh no, we don't pay for extra hours. So I think that they're trying to deal with a crisis, in education. Like, they need to make money fast. So I think they're worrying about just getting fast contracts, but they're not thinking ahead as to, how to keep those contracts. Right.
Yeah. So, for the long term.
Yeah. So lately they've been losing a lot of students who used to be with us, and they don't like it anymore. Right. So they're leaving. And I see that happening not just in my training center, but in many training centers. And it's been going on since last year, and many language centers, they just disappeared. They went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look at that. I imagine. Yeah, I know a lot of businesses have, gone bankrupt and gone out of business with time. Yeah. So you bring up the pandemic, and so you're back in Chile now. So what was your experience like when the pandemic started? And what was your experience like getting back to Chile?
So, when the pandemic started, I was on vacation in Thailand, and I went back to Tianjin in January 2020. I think I went back a week before Chinese New Year, and so we were supposed to go to work that week, but we went one day, and then the country closed. It was so extreme. Because from one day to the other, you were just not allowed to leave your house, and everything was closed, and there was no one on the street. Sometimes we would just go out and walk, just me and a couple of friends, and there was literally no one. And to me, it was so amazing that in the most overcrowded country in the world, the streets were empty, and which is something I never saw in Santiago. Yeah, and then I think that they handled the pandemic really well. We would get messages from work all the time. Every day you had to report your temperature, and if you've had any symptoms, and if you went anywhere, you had to specify where you went. And so the company kept all those records because the government requires them, right? So then if something happens, it's very easy to track. And then we were all worried about our salaries, because when you live in a country that's not your own, and we still needed to keep paying rent, and so when living, right, you have living expenses. So the company kept paying us. For the first 2 months, they paid us full salary, even though we weren't going to work. And then eventually the government said that everybody in Tianjin is going to receive minimum wage, which is very low. The minimum wage is 2,000 RMB, which is a little bit less than 200,000 pesos. But it's still okay for the city. Like, you can still make a living, in very bad conditions, but it's still a living, right? And so my rent was 3,000 RMB, and I was going to get a 2,000 RMB salary. Yeah. So in the end, as all the foreigners got together, we talked to the company, and in the end, the minimum wage for foreigners became 6,000 RMB. So that was rent and expenses, right? Yeah. So I think that they were very, very accommodating, and they were very helpful. And then eventually, since things weren't getting better, we weren't, going back to work. the security measures and healthcare measures were very strict. You had to download this app on your phone, and you had to scan a QR code everywhere you went, if you went anywhere. Well, there weren't many places to go, like just supermarket and pharmacies were open, but nothing else. And so every time you had to scan a code. Like if you took a taxi, you had to scan a code. If you took the subway, you had to scan a code. If you entered the supermarket, you would scan a code. You went back to your house, you scan a code. And then, so the government had all that data, right? Which I think many foreigners would perceive as a breach in your privacy, right? And they hated it. Many foreigners complained, like, I don't want the government to know my every move, right? But at the same time, they're already okay, and they're one of the few countries that are okay now. And yeah, because then when there was a new outbreak, they knew exactly where to find it and who to isolate. Because everybody was getting. But I would never see that happening here, for example. It's so different, right?
Yeah, very different.
The reason I came to Chile was that my visa expired and my passport also expired, and it would take a long time to do it from China because they were taking a long time with emergency passports and everything. So I just thought, okay, I'll just go to Chile. It'll take me about 3 weeks, and then I'll be back. And it's been almost a year from that.
Oh, wow.
I'm still working for the company right now. My contract has been frozen, which means that I still have a contract with them, but I'm not working with them actively. So until I get back. But when I get back, I do have my job there.
Yeah, I mean, and then you're mentioning, let's say, the future, Jorge. So, Jorge, what are your future plans? What would you like to do?
You know what? Ever since I had my meltdown, I decided I don't think I want to plan so far ahead. In my immediate future, I just want to go back to China and continue what I was doing there. I also have my partner waiting for me there. I have my things there. Like I brought like 5 boxers and 1 pair of pants, 2 shorts, 3 t-shirts. That's all I brought with me because I was going to be here for 3 weeks. And so, yeah, I bought this shirt just for this. Like,
thank you very much for being so considerate.
Yeah, I just didn't want you to see me, in my my pandemic clothes. You have that cool t-shirt.
Yes. And we are going to get one of these, so don't worry. You're getting one as a guest.
And add that to your wardrobe.
Yeah, of course. You can work in China when you're back. And Jorge, do you have any advice then for English teachers that are considering teaching in China or in any other country based on your experience?
I think it's a great experience to work in China. I've met a lot of foreigners who complain a lot about the country because they don't understand, the culture or they don't agree with, many ways in which, the companies are run. For people who want to work in China, I think it's a really good experience to try. It's always nice to move anywhere to teach. I think you get a real sense of, what happens elsewhere, and you kind of move yourself away from this bubble, right? That's your own country or your own city, because even realities within the same country are different, right? Depending on where you go. So, but many foreigners have trouble with that in China because it's so different from what they're used to. And there's a lot of times there's this feeling of superiority of foreigners in China. They're like, I've heard many times like, these people have no idea how to run a company, or these people, their ideas are so bad, or I don't know, they're spitting on the street. How is that even possible? But what they don't see is that we are the visitors there, right? Like you were saying before, we are the ones that need to adapt to that, not the other way around, right? A whole country is not going to adapt to what one foreigner in the room thinks, right? And the fact that things are done differently in your country doesn't mean that they're better necessarily. Right? They're just different. Absolutely. So I think it's a good opportunity to learn. It's a good opportunity to explore, to meet people from other places. Right? I think if a teacher from Chile wants to go to China to teach, it's very important to have, well, first your bachelor's degree. In some cities, they require a master's degree, so you need to have it before you go. That's if you're not a native speaker, because that's the other thing. Like if you're a native speaker, you just need to speak English, and or well, they do require a bachelor's degree, but it doesn't have to be in education, or it doesn't have to be in English language, right? So I have people, I work with some American teachers who are engineers back home, right? Or architects, or with South African people who are business majors. Yeah. But if you're a non-native speaker, you need a degree either in English or in education. And then you need a master's degree, at least in the city where I'm working. And what I would recommend for everybody to do is to take a Tefl course online. I took mine with Bridge Tefl. Honestly, if you're already a teacher and you have experience teaching, I don't think you'll learn much from the course. But it's in China, it is necessary. It's a requirement for your visa. So.
And I think that this is one thing I experienced a little bit, because when I first came to Chile, the requirement of taking a Tefl course was waived, seeing that I have 3 teaching credentials, a master's degree, and I speak Spanish fluently. But then I started hitting roadblocks. I think it was around 2013 or so, where universities would give me an interview. But then because I did not have a Tefl degree, they didn't want to give me a job. And that started happening with some institutes also. So I had to go online and then take an online Tefl course to like have that, to be able to check that box. Yeah. And it sounds like China is similar in that way. They want to see that box checked.
Yeah, it happens in many countries in Asia. I think most countries in Asia, you need that Tefl course, especially now. When Jose Luis was asking me about the future, I really don't know what I want to do, but I know I want to go back to China, and I know that having had to study a Tefl course made me think, what if I take an online course to get a Spanish teaching certification, as a Spanish native speaker. I think that would kind of open up like a new world of opportunities for me. And I was thinking, what if I teach Spanish in Japan or in Korea, or I don't know. That would be fun to try. Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Definitely.
So Jorge, how can people find you if they're interested in connecting with you?
You can write to my email. That's george.comte, that's COMTE @outlook.com. You can also find me on Facebook as Jorge Comte Godoy, or you can find me on Instagram as Mr. Comte. I'm always happy to get in touch with other teachers and exchange experiences and techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's also, let's say, the spirit of this podcast, to share experiences, to share, let's say, different backgrounds. So thank you very much.
Yes. Sharing is caring. It certainly sparks joy.
Absolutely.
And so, that's it for this episode of ELT in Chile. We hope you enjoyed this interview with Jorge. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Jorge.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And if you do have any questions or comments, you can write us at podcast@ELTinchile. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'm Daniel Gwynn.
And I'm Jose Luis Poblete. So stay safe, stay kind, and keep on teaching. Very good. So,
all right, there we go.
Thank you very much, Jorge.
Thank you.